Alright guys, we are back yet again. It is Gith here with Freedom Expedition number 1. This is the first launch to Space Station Freedom, and this is going to be launched aboard the Saturn MO2. The rocket you're seeing here is the single core variant of the HO3 you saw in the previous video. And obviously, this one is meant to launch the crew up to the station. Alright, we just had liftoff there. So what you're seeing here, it's similar to how the Saturn 1B in real life operated. Same idea, launches the S4B with the Apollo stack above it, all the way up into low Earth orbit. Now we're in the IVA. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, if you've ever seen a launching Kerbal Space Program, this is pretty much exactly how it goes. But again, for the first couple of videos here, I did want to show the full launch so you could see how these rockets worked. And yeah, we're rolling and starting the pitch over. Now with this, the ascent profile, it's pretty much the exact same as what was used on the HO3. What I found for these two rockets is that ascent profile actually works fairly well, despite the fact it's not optimized for either one. And although we still get a good gravity turnout of it, it's fine. I'm happy with it. Yeah, you're just seeing the IVA view of it. It's a fairly simple IVA. I had a dream once upon a time to make a IVA for the Apollo capsule that was a little bit more in depth than that one is. But that's alright. Maybe one day I'll get to it. But either way, we're speeding along here. We just approached half of Mach. It's a relatively slow launch, which of course is normal. You know, we're launching a crew up into space. We can't send them up there at like 50 Gs. That would just be very ill-advised. But anyway, going a little bit more into this rocket itself, the Saturn MO2, what that's referring to is, well, obviously it's referring to the first stage there. But the reason why it's called MO2 versus literally anything else, the M, that refers to the style of the rocket, which in this case is called multi-body. So that's what that's referring to. And then with the HO3, the H is referring to the heavy variant of that rocket. So with MO3, what the other two numbers are indicating, with the multi-body rockets, not only can they go up to the heavy variant, where you can use the extra cores as your boosters. The multi-body can also support solid rocket boosters, i.e. the Titan boosters. And with that, that's what the 0 indicates. On this rocket, it's an MO2, so it's not using any solid rocket motors to use as boosters. If this was using solid rocket boosters, which it was never used on a manned launch, we would call this the M22 or the M42, depending on how many solid rocket boosters we attach to it. Alright, and the 2, what that is an indicator of the second stage. In this particular case, we're just using the S4B with the improved J2S engine. And with the HO3, that was using the S4C, the stretched S4B with the J2S. And that's basically how the name scheme goes for the multi-body rockets. Fairly straightforward, and once you know what it is, it makes sense. It's a good way to organize it. Now, as far as the actual spacecraft we're launching here, this is called the Apollo Block 4. Obviously, as the name implies, it's derived from the Apollo Block 2 of Apollo heritage. And what it is, it uses the same basic shape as the Apollo capsule did. It's the same dimensions and whatnot. But with this one, it's been upgraded to use the carry 5 astronauts rather than just the original 3. This is by leveraging the Skylab rescue dimensions on the internals to allow for 2 extra people to be launched. Now, as a result, that does provide us with a very crowded capsule. So even though we're only going up in the low Earth orbit, and these astronauts are only spending a matter of hours in this capsule, cramming 5 people into something the size of a small car, it's not a good idea. If you've ever been on a long car ride in a tiny car, it's not a fun time. So that's why they leveraged the extra weight on the MO2 and ultimately the uh, what the hell it's called, the S1E. Prior to it, they leveraged the extra weight that it could launch to add a mission module. And you'll be seeing that once we get to separation, transposition, and docking. But basically, what that is, it's kind of derived, or rather inspired by, how the Soviets did their Soyuz capsule, where you'd have the crew capsule that carried the crew during launch, and then you'd have a separate module that it was docked with that would give them a little bit more room, habitability space in space. And that's a pretty good idea. I mean, honestly, when you're going in the low Earth orbit, you don't really need that much because if you're in low Earth orbit, either your crew is small enough that all you need is just that basic capsule space, or you're not going to be spending so much time that you need all the space. And with the Freedom launches, typically they do launch in a launch to rendezvous fashion. On my launches, you aren't going to see this until right around until we're at initial operational capacity. This is because I derped a little bit and didn't realize how MechJeb handles launch to rendezvous. So I basically had to sit there and teach myself how to use it. So for the first several videos, you won't see that. You'll see a long travel time that I'm going to skip over. But yeah, ultimately, once we get up to that point, launches will be a little bit smoother. There'll be videos will be much less longer. This particular video, before I sped up the travel time to the station, was almost half hour long, which is no bueno. That's a long, long video, and ultimately, I don't want to sit here and talk for that long. But anyway, going back to what I was going into with that mission module. On the Block 3, they used a smaller one. It was about 75% the diameter of the Apollo capsule, and it was used during the Spacelab program, which in the Turned Skyward timeline was the follow up to Skylab. And yeah, it's basically they just used it for cargo purposes as well as to, I believe it also had a toilet on it. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure it was either the Block 3 mission module or the Block 4 you're going to be seeing here in a moment that had a toilet on it for the astronauts as they traveled. But essentially, with the Block 4, it's the same idea, just upscale to be the same length, or the same diameter rather, as the Apollo capsule. And it also introduces the CADS docking mechanism to maintain compatibility with the Freedom space station versus the Apollo probe and drogue system, which, I mean, it's efficient for what it is, but the way it's designed, it's very hard to build a proper station with just that kind of mechanism. And ultimately, it's difficult to, justify providing all of that technical specs to other countries, because of course Freedom, like the ISS in real life, is meant to be more of an international station than Spacelab was. Yeah, so yeah, we're coming up to circularization here. Yeah, it's like I said, it's the same basic launch you've probably seen 1,000 times in Kerbal Space Program. Of course, I just can't help showing off my pretty rockets. But either way, yep, here it goes. Now, about the Block 3, or Block 4 rather, that you're seeing, basically the way the incremental upgrades worked, going up to the Block 3 from the Block 2, they took the service module and they shortened it, because, they weren't going to the moon anymore. They didn't need all of that fuel. They didn't need all of that battery power. They didn't need all of that. So they were able to shorten the service module significantly, which not only saves weight, but is more efficient for what you need to do. The actual capsule itself, the command module, stayed pretty much the same going into the Block 3. There's basically no difference other than just reconfiguring it to be a little bit more efficient for low Earth orbit missions. Then moving up into the Block 3 Plus, that's when we start to see the 5-man crew introduced. That's when we see the first mission modules get used on it. And yeah, it just followed that same incremental process. And There's separation. We're going to transpose and dock with the mission module. And you'll notice I derp a little bit on the docking. I tried to do it manually and wasn't a good idea. But, oh well, you get to see me actually play the game for a little bit. But either way, going back to what I was saying, going up into the Block 4, it's same incremental upgrade, gets a little bit of a fuel upgrade, so it can put up more cargo mass and all that, and also carry the much larger mission module. And yeah, other than that, not really much of a difference going beyond that. Yeah, now what you're seeing here is I'm trying to dock, and you'll see I rotate it. That's because I need to get it oriented so that everything's lined up correctly. If you see the target there, I'm trying to line that up so that it's at a basically exactly how I had it there. It needs to be lined up perfectly so that the CADS port on the other end will line up properly with the station and also orient the windows so that they're in a Earth-facing fashion. Because until later on in the station's life, there really isn't that much in the way of viewports on the station. The Apollo capsules serve as a good way to basically give the astronauts a chance to look down at Earth. Until we actually get the cupola, which is going to be a little bit down the line. There's really not much in the way of that. Now that's not something that was ever actually mentioned in the timeline. It's more something I just noticed as I was building the station itself. Is that there's really nowhere to look out and see except the Apollo capsules that are docked with it. And ultimately, that's fine. The Apollo capsules were still used during the station's life, either for just basic I need to get away from these other people purposes, or because they had something or another that needed to be done in the capsule or the mission module. And there we go. Actually, looks like I docked this fine. Maybe later that I derp the docking up a little bit. But either way. And yeah, with that, you'll also notice that I'm not able to deorbit the S4B. This is going to happen on a couple of launches you're going to see here. Basically, I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the line I had deleted the electricity charge from the S4B instrument unit, and that's why I can't do anything with it. So I just leave it up in orbit, and it'll deorbit later on. Or rather, I'm just going to go in the tracking station to destroy it, because I don't feel like trying to deorbit it any other way. But yeah, now you'll see the front there. Because of the mission module being the same size as the Apollo capsule, you can't see out the front. You look out the front, all you see is this big metal block. So what was done on the mission modules, there's a front-facing window, as well as now in this configuration, now that we're up in the late 80s by this point in the timeline, they're able to add cameras so you can still dock from the command module, but at the same time you don't actually need to see out the window to do it. But yeah, now they're getting ready to start rendezvousing with the station. At this point, I'm just going to speed up the travel time. It takes a little while. Because I didn't do launch to rendezvous on this launch, they have to match planes. They have to increase the phasing orbit, so that way they can do the Hohmann transfer over to the station in order to meet up and dock with it. Now, going into that, basically the point of this mission, it's Freedom Expedition number 1. It's the very first launch to the station. The purpose of it is pretty much exactly like you would see on the first launch to ISS. Basically, they just get the station ready to start receiving more of the modules. They configure it to start working properly, all that good stuff. Now in Kerbal, what I'm going to be doing with it, basically they're just going to sit up there, make sure the station's good to go, keep it oriented, all that. Because with my station, it's not 100% controlled. There's really no control mechanism on it. And the only reason I'm even able to control it is because I put a MechDrev controller on there. And that's why I'm able to control it slightly. But with Kerbals, I can control it better, and it works out a little bit better. But yeah, we're just steaming on through the rendezvous process here. It's fairly boring, which is why I'm speeding it up, and it takes a long time. As you're seeing, even at 400% speed, it's taking a significant amount of time here. But that's okay. Ultimately, we do figure this out in later missions, and it gets a lot better. But yeah, Let's see. What else do I want to talk about right now? Well, we could talk about the upcoming missions here. Once they dock and the station is good to go, the next mission to go up is Freedom Assembly number 2, and what that is the first node of the station. In real life, this was called Unity, and in the timeline, it was also called Unity, and it works in pretty much the exact same way. It's going to dock to the uh, forward end of the station. I'm really forgetting my nautical terms here, but whatever. It docks to the forward end of the station, and it's basically where everything starts expanding out. After that, we bring up the first solar truss section. With that, that's going to have the first large solar arrays that are going to be deployed, and we're also going to see a couple of EVAs in both of those missions. Once the Node 1 is docked, we're going to see our first EVA of the station's life. That's going to be to retract one of the solar panels on the Challenger module, because the way the solar truss works, not only does it carry the solar arrays, it also carries the first radiator to help heat management on the station. And obviously that overlaps with where that solar array would be jutting out to. So the solar array just needs to be retracted. Now that, with that being said, it's retracted just before the launch of the solar truss. I'm not exactly sure on the timing of it, but I believe it would have been a matter of a couple of days before they launched it. The retracting that one solar array does cut the amount of power the station has, and while it doesn't necessarily need that much, when it's just sitting there not doing anything, it's still not a good thing to have. So ultimately, it's just done that way, and it works out. Beyond that, we send up the next Freedom Assembly. What that is the Discovery Lab, which is the U.S. laboratory that's sent up. With that, I'm not exactly sure what the real life equivalent of it is. I'll be honest, I don't know much about the ISS in terms of its modules, mostly because it has Russian shit on it, and I don't like Russian spacecraft. But that's a whole other topic of discussion that I want to get into. But yeah, the Discovery Lab, that's the first U.S. lab that's sent up. After that, we get the next solar truss that comes in, and basically the way it works is with each lab that's added, a solar truss is added before it. So obviously we're going to see the first solar truss go up with Discovery coming after it. The next one that goes on the starboard side would come up with the Columbus Lab, which is the European laboratory that's added. And then after that, we do up Node 2. Then we do the 2 Japanese labs, the cupola, and there's a bunch of other stuff. But that's later on down the line. Alright, now we had just rendezvoused with this station, and now here you go. Now you're seeing me derp a little bit on the docking. Now with this, I did actually figure out what is causing that little bit of derping. Basically what I needed to do is once I was lined up and was soft docked with the station, I needed to turn off the lock to target on my SAS. If I would have done that, the ship would have stabilized and it would have just went right in. So yeah, we are successfully docked now. Basically, you just see me move the crew into the Challenger module. Um, yeah, with that, Bill Kerman, which is the engineer for the mission, he's going to sit in the airlock so that he can do his EVA a little bit later on. And yeah, the rest of the crew just goes into the Challenger module, and that's where they're going to be sitting for quite a while. Now, as far as the Challenger module, it does have an IVA. It actually uses one of the IVAs from PorkJet's inflatable habitat mod. Now, with that, I don't actually show it in early videos because for some reason there was some kind of bug that was preventing the IVA from working. I have no idea why or what was causing it, but it is what it is. And we're getting the last crew moved in. What you're also going to see, I believe, is me messing around with the station's robotic arm. I'm not going to get into too much detail on it right now, but what I can tell you, it's based on the same mod that I got the solar truss arrays from. It uses the grappler structural part as its body, and then it also uses parts from Infernal Robotics to serve as the hinges, rotation parts, all that good stuff. And basically, just to give you a rundown of how it works, you're going to see a little bit of it here. Um, it moves itself along the Challenger module with the gantry, and that's how it positions itself. But yeah, it just works in a joint system. Obviously the first joint listed to a certain degree, next joint to another one, so on and so forth. And it's a very articulate arm. I'm very happy with it, especially after tweaking it. And while I haven't actually tried moving anything seriously heavy with it, I'm fairly confident it's going to be able to move something at least the size of one of the laboratory modules. Now, with that being said, I don't ever plan on actually doing that with the station, just because it doesn't really need to happen. The way the station is constructed in the timeline is with tugs, which you're going to be seeing in future videos. So it doesn't really need the robotic arm to serve as moving these modules around, because we aren't dealing with a shuttle. It doesn't need to move something from a cargo bay and then berth it and do all that other stuff. So what I did instead of using a docking port, because with same vessel docking, it's wonky in Kerbal Space Program. I could never get it to work in a way that I was happy with. So instead, what I do is I use a grappler, which is used for asteroid missions, but you can use it for damn near anything. And that's what I use to grab onto stuff. Now you'll actually see that in action with the first resupply mission, which is going to be its own video, and it's a very interesting way of how it works, and I'll be getting into more detail over how the arm works. But yeah, the first expedition is in place, and we are good to go. I'm just getting it reoriented to travel on the Earth properly. You'll see that a lot in videos. Persistent rotation doesn't work very well. But yeah, that's it, and we are good to go. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll be getting the next video up here shortly. Got a bit of a backlog.